You know, every year or so, this really strange political drama takes over Washington. It's filled with all this confusing jargon, you hear about X-dates and extraordinary measures. It's the debt ceiling crisis, and it's this reoccurring threat that literally brings the world's biggest economy right to the brink of disaster. But here's the thing, it seems complicated, but it's really not, so we're going to break it all down for you. What it is, how it works, and why it really matters.
Okay, let's just dive right into the core puzzle here, because it makes no sense, right? Why would the wealthiest nation on Earth, the country with the world's reserve currency, even think about not paying for things it's already bought and paid for? The answer, well, it's not really about economics. It's about a pretty cynical feature of our modern politics.
So this right here is the absolute key to understanding the whole mess. It's a paradox. Imagine this. Congress passes laws all year long that say, go spend this money. It's the government's official to-do list. That's like you using your credit card for everything. But then when the giant credit card bill comes due, a totally separate law, the debt ceiling, can step in and say, nope, you're not allowed to borrow the money to pay that bill. So you have to pay, but you're legally blocked from getting the cash to do it. It is a completely self-imposed crisis.
So how on earth do we get to this point? I mean, this system wasn't designed to be some kind of economic doomsday device. It actually started out as just a simple tool to make things easier for the government. So let's take a quick look at how that simple tool got twisted into a political weapon.
Yeah, back in 1917, during World War I, the whole reason for the debt ceiling was to make it easier for the Treasury to get money for the war. It was about flexibility, not restriction. Then in 1939, they just tidied things up into the single limit we know today, still mostly a housekeeping thing. But then 2011 happened, and that's when the whole game changed. That's when this brinkmanship became the standard playbook, and the ceiling got turned into a hostage in these huge political fights.
Okay, so it became a weapon, we get that. But that still doesn't really answer the why, does it? Why do politicians keep playing this game, risking total economic catastrophe? Well, the answer is a very specific political strategy that honestly explains this whole recurring cycle of crisis perfectly.
And it all comes back to this quote from a political strategist named Jude Wanniski. See, way back in the 70s, he laid out what he called the two Santa Claus theory. And believe me, it is the secret key to understanding why these debt ceiling fights almost always blow up when you have a divided government.
All right, so here's how the playbook works. It's basically a two-step dance. Step 1, when your party controls everything, you play Santa Claus. You hand out all the gifts, big tax cuts, popular spending projects, and you just quietly raise the debt ceiling to pay for it all. No drama. But then, step 2, the moment the other party takes over, you instantly transform into a deficit hawk. You point at the very same debt you helped create, and you use the debt ceiling as your weapon. You refuse to raise it unless the other side agrees to cut their popular Santa programs. It's a backdoor way to win policy fights you could never win through the normal process.
So when this playbook gets put into motion, and Congress just digs in its heels, what's actually happening inside the Treasury Department? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and look at the mechanics of how this countdown to crisis really unfolds.
First, just take a second and look at that number. $36 trillion. That is the legal wall that the U.S. government is not allowed to borrow past. Once our total national debt slams into that wall, the clock officially starts ticking.
Now, once we hit that wall, the Treasury Secretary can't just issue new debt. But they do have a few tricks up their sleeve to buy some time. They're called extraordinary measures. And really, they're just legal, super high-stakes accounting maneuvers. It's like the government digging through its own couch cushions for spare change, pausing investments for federal retirement funds, things like that, just to keep the lights on for a few more months while the politicians argue.
But you can only find so much change in the couch cushions, right? Eventually, those extraordinary measures run out. The government runs out of tricks, and it runs out of cash. And that day, that's what's known as the X-date. This is the real deadline. This is the financial point of no return. After the X-date, the United States government simply does not have enough money coming in to pay for everything it owes. We're talking military paychecks, Social Security, interest on our debt, everything.
So what happens if we actually cross that line, if we go past the X-date? Why should anyone outside of Washington, D.C. care about this political game of chicken? Because let me tell you, the price of failure wouldn't just be paid by politicians. It would be paid by everyone, everywhere across the entire globe.
And these numbers right here lay out the stakes in the starkest terms possible. Moody's Analytics ran the simulation, and it is bleak. A U.S. default wouldn't just be a minor dip, it would be a self-inflicted catastrophe. We're talking a severe recession, nearly 7 million jobs lost, unemployment spiking to 9%, and the stock market, well, your 401k could lose almost half its value. Just to be clear, this is an economic crisis on the scale of the 2008 meltdown, except this time it would be created entirely by choice.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, this entire process sounds uniquely insane. And you'd be right. Only one other developed country, Denmark, even has a similar law. But look at the difference. In the US, we set the ceiling just high enough to practically guarantee a fight every time. In Denmark, they set it so ridiculously high above their actual debt that it's a complete non-issue, a technical formality. This proves the problem isn't the law itself, it's the political culture that chooses to weaponize it.
And that really brings us right to the fundamental takeaway from all of this. In its entire history, the debt ceiling has never actually been a tool to reduce our national debt, not once. It has only ever been used to approve borrowing for spending that Congress has already approved. So as long as it exists in its current form, it's not a tool for fiscal management. It's just a loaded gun pointed perpetually at the heart of the American economy.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling question to think about. Is this constant cycle of self-inflicted crisis just an unfortunate flaw, a bug in the American political system, or, as that two Santa Claus theory suggests, is it actually an intentional feature, a predictable outcome of a political strategy that benefits from the very chaos it creates? It's definitely something to chew on.